In the 8th century BCE, after the fall of the northern kingdom of Israel, the southern kingdom of Judah continued to exist, though its territory was small and its national strength weak. Even at its peak, its population did not exceed 500,000, only about one-third of the northern kingdom at its height. Because of its small size and limited power, it attracted little attention from the great empires competing for dominance. However, the fall of the northern kingdom brought an unprecedented sense of crisis to the rulers and people of Judah. Under this pressure, a group of thinkers with profound concern for the future and strong moral responsibility emerged, people later called prophets. Influenced by these prophets, the Jewish sense of ethnic identity and religious consciousness grew stronger, and certain political reforms were carried out within the kingdom. Meanwhile, major changes were unfolding in the external political landscape. The once mighty Assyrian Empire began to decline, and in its place rose the Neo-Babylonian Empire established by the Chaldeans. The new Babylonian kingdom quickly occupied most of Assyria's southern territories and expanded westward, contesting control of Syria and Palestine with Egypt. In 605 BCE, the Babylonians fought a decisive battle against the allied forces of Egypt and the remnants of Assyria at Carchemish on the banks of the Euphrates. The Egyptian-Assyrian coalition suffered a devastating defeat. The Egyptian troops fled back to Egypt, and with the fall of its capital, Nineveh, the Assyrian Empire vanished completely. Babylon surged to power like a whirlwind, becoming the dominant force in West Asia. For a long time, the weak kingdom of Judah had been under Egyptian influence. But as Egypt declined, Judah's situation became increasingly perilous. On one side stood the powerful new Babylonian Empire. On the other was Egypt, its former overlord. Choosing which side to align with became King Jehoiakim's most troubling dilemma. A single misstep could lead to national catastrophe. In the end, he adopted a dual strategy, outwardly submitting to Babylon while secretly maintaining ties with Egypt. But this approach proved disastrous and ultimately brought about the destruction of Judah. In 586 BCE, after besieging Jerusalem for 2 years, King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon captured the city. Babylonian soldiers tore down its walls, burned the temple, and carried off all its gold and silver vessels. Many Jews were killed in battle. Many others were executed. All surviving citizens, except the poorest of the poor, were taken to Babylon, including the king, the queen mother, nobles, priests, and wealthy families. The once flourishing Jerusalem was reduced to ruins. Jewish history entered its darkest chapter. Over its existence, the kingdom of Judah had 19 kings and survived more than 160 years longer than the northern kingdom. Now it too had fallen. With its destruction, the ancient Hebrew states came to an end. The Jews taken to Babylon lost their freedom and were reduced to slavery. Their hearts were filled with hatred for the Babylonians and with deep longing for their homeland and their temple. At first glance, it seemed that the Jewish people were nearing extinction. Both kingdoms had perished, and most of the population had been exiled to distant lands. Yet unlike the 10 tribes of the north, the Jews exiled to Babylon did not assimilate or disappear. Instead, they preserved and renewed their religious ideas, giving their people new spiritual unity. In fact, even before the fall of Israel and Judah, many thinkers known as prophets had already emerged among the Jews. Responding to the political situation, they foretold the destruction of the kingdom and the suffering of the people, while also emphasizing that salvation would come if the people remained faithful. When the Jews were exiled to Babylon and suffered the pain of bondage, they were deeply shaken, for the prophets' warnings had come true. They reflected on the reasons for their nation's downfall and repented for their lack of faith, while holding hope for future redemption. Meanwhile, Babylon was one of the world's great cultural centers. The Jews witnessed magnificent buildings, splendid palaces, and extensive contacts with distant lands. Their worldview broadened considerably. The God they worshipped, originally a deity of the Jewish people, was no longer seen as merely a local god, but as the God of the entire world and universe. Jewish spirituality and doctrine deepened, and narrow territorial concepts dissolved completely. This transformation would profoundly influence the future Jewish diaspora, enabling them to maintain common beliefs and a strong sense of unity wherever they lived. In 538 BCE, Cyrus the Great of the Persian Empire conquered Babylon. One of his first acts was to allow the exiled Jews to return to their homeland, and he ordered that more than 5,000 temple vessels taken by Babylon be returned to Jerusalem. Thus, after more than 50 years in foreign lands, the first group of about 40,000 Jews began their long journey back to Canaan. Many more returned in subsequent years, though some, accustomed to life in Babylon, chose to remain. To them, distant and desolate Jerusalem was more a spiritual home than a practical one. Those who stayed made Babylon the second great center of Jewish culture outside Palestine. Their descendants would continue to spread across Central Asia, Persia, Arabia, India, and even farther east to China. They later came to be known as the Jews of the East. Those who spent months crossing the desert to return home were greeted by devastation. Broken walls, overgrown ruins, rubble-strewn streets, and many foreigners who had settled there with a hostile attitude toward them. Yet the Jews felt grateful. They had returned to their own land. With Persian support, they rebuilt the walls of Jerusalem and restored the destroyed temple. The reconstruction took nearly 20 years and was completed in 516 BCE, the famous Second Temple. Although its scale did not match Solomon's temple, the spiritual resilience of the Jewish people, tempered through suffering, was stronger and more mature than ever. Thus ended the early history of the Jewish people. They now entered the Second Temple period, deeply influenced by Greek and later Roman civilization. In the period after their return to Palestine, Jewish morale weakened. People grew lax in their faith. Many married foreign women, and some could no longer speak Hebrew. In 457 BCE, the prophet Ezra traveled from Babylon to Jerusalem. Disturbed by what he saw, he consulted with community leaders and demanded that all who had married foreign women divorce them. He also read the Torah, the 5 books of Moses, to the people, urging them to relearn and obey the law. Through these reforms, Jewish belief, doctrine, and legal structures were strengthened and formalized. At this time, Canaan was a province of the Persian Empire, known as the province of Yahad. The Persian king allowed the Jews to govern themselves, refrained from interfering in their religion or festivals, and appointed Jewish officials to administer local affairs. In 445 BCE, another Jew, Nehemiah, came from Persia to Jerusalem. A trusted official of the Persian king, he was appointed governor of Yahad. He initiated social reforms, forcing wealthy families to forgive the debts of the poor, returning confiscated lands to their owners, and reducing taxes. He organized the rebuilding of the city walls to fend off external threats and required strict observance of the law and the Sabbath. For the next 2 centuries, the population of Palestine grew, society remained stable, and the economy prospered, until the arrival of Greek influence, which once again transformed the course of history.